Catherine is a psychologist with a background in counseling. She trained as a psychologist, by the way, in Australia. You'll pick up Australian here and there. So you'll say half this or half that, while we say half past. With a background in counseling, group work with children, adolescents and families, while her core skills are child and family psychology, program management and community development. So we've got a lot of commonalities here. Through her passion for community development, Kat's key focus has been on designing and developing programs that bring substantial change to disadvantaged communities in South Africa and abroad. Kat's work currently focuses on assisting young people gain access to higher education. She runs NGO training as a consultant for Save the Children International in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Kat manages SAIRI scholarships in Cape Town and consults to the Raymond Ackerman Golf, not Gold, Golf Academy Scholarship Program, Golf Academy Scholarship Program. She is completing her master's by dissertation at UCT, exploring the teen gap between higher education studies, aspirations and reality. Kath also has 4 children, 3 of whom are teenagers. She says that she likes teenagers a lot. I mean, if she wouldn't, she would be in trouble at home, right? She has 3. So I would like to ask you to give a warm welcome to Catherine. Oh, and would you mind signing the registration as you are here? If your name is not on it, please put it on.
Good morning, everyone. This is an inaugural event, is that right, Siska?
That's a very difficult word.
A very first time that you've done this thing. Okay, so that's exciting, and I'm really happy that I get to be your speaker today. I'm going to talk this kind of space between high school and tertiary. I could have talked a lot about what stops kids getting into university after they've applied or why they struggle when they get there, but what I've decided to focus on is the core problem of why there are so few kids who are actually even able to apply for tertiary. So hopefully you won't be too disappointed that that's where I'm going to go. It's probably, I could have talked about the other things, but probably my expertise is more about what goes wrong in the high school space that actually causes us to have so few kids who are tertiary able. So, yeah. All right. So this is a little picture of, this is an infographic that I can send you if you're interested in it. I've chopped it into pieces, and this is the top piece. I didn't make it. It's on, I found it on Facebook, actually, where we find all good things nowadays. It's a little picture of kind of what South Africa looks like at the moment. The key point for this for me is just looking at the Gini coefficient there, the 0.63. So if you're unaware of what a Gini coefficient is, it's a measure of inequality within a country. So it looks at like the top income wealth sector of society in the bottom and what the gap is. So if the Gini coefficient is 0, it means that there's no inequality in the society. And if it's 1, it means there's 100% inequality. It kind of goes on this funny scale that you logarithmic maths thing that I'm not going to explain because I don't understand it. But what you do need to know is a 0.63 Gini coefficient is one of the highest in the world. So South Africa sits with a huge disparity between the people who are the most wealthy and the people who are least. Not on? Okay. Okay, so let's have a look and see what happens in the school space around access to education, and particularly that's related to wealth, which I'll show you in a minute. So this is part of the same infographic that I've chopped into pieces. This is looking at how many kids, young people, they're all kids to me, right? Because my kids are that age, right? So when I say kids, I really mean 15 to 24-year-olds. Looking at how many young people have completed grade 9, and that's by race. So the dark colour at the top is for African/black, and the middle colour is coloured, and the lighter colour is Indian, and the white, can you see? Yes, you can, is white, although it's not quite white. So you can see by race, people of colour are less likely to complete grade 9, but we do have a reasonable level of grade 9 completion. And then when we look into grade 12, we see that something horrendous has happened. Lots of kids haven't completed, and particularly kids of colour, kids who are historically disadvantaged, are not making it through to finishing grade 12. So then when it comes to getting into university, it's not surprising, in fact, that the white kids who are more likely to have completed school are also the kids who are more likely to actually make it into university. Okay. This is a story from, I'm going to tell you some of my stories from my research. I'll tell you more about my research in a moment, but let me just read to you about Bongile. It's not her real name. She lives in Kailicha with her mum, who's a high school teacher. Her dad lives in Claremont. Her parents divorced last year. Dad is a soldier. Bongile goes to a low-cost southern suburbs high school. She hopes to study at UCT to become a doctor or a psychologist. University of the Free State is her second choice, as her older sister is studying actuarial science there. She would like to specialise in obstetrics. And this is what she says: UCT, it gives me, it excites me. I said, what about it is exciting? She said, the whole university, what it offers, the idea of going there. Compared to other universities, it is more advanced. It's the best. It interests me. I can see myself going there. I said to her, do you think other black kids also feel the same? She said, in my family, I was taught to aim for the best. Us black kids come from difficult backgrounds. They see UCT as a higher place, a dream. This is Tembasile. He lives in Leagues in Mitchell's Plain. He lives with his auntie and 2 cousins and a nephew. His parents are in the Eastern Cape. He is in grade 11 at a low-cost Mitchell's Plain school, which attracts mostly coloured Muslim families. As a young black man, he is the minority of the population at his school. He is interested in studying to be a sound technician at a radio station or a music producer for a world-renowned artist. I said to him, did you look at any courses? He said, I have looked, but I didn't apply. When will you apply? Before the end of second term. I'm not sure what institute. I'm still researching. Where will a sound technician course take you to? Radio DJ. I want to produce sound for movies, own my own record label. My mum, she has an idea that she wants me to be a doctor. It's something she frequently says. It will give me a good job and a steady income, and I am capable of doing it. I said to him, have you considered it? And he said, yes, but it's not something I really want to do. To be a doctor, you have to work hard and think. I'm more of a creative person. I like to be artistic. And then I asked him, had he spoken to his mum about this? And he said, no. Okay. This is a little picture of expectations of tertiary. So you can hear from those kids that they do expect to go to tertiary. This was a study that was done in the Fishhook Valley. So Fishhook Valley is quite diverse in terms of race and wealth, with kids in the poorer areas living in Masipumaleli going to Masipumaleli High School, which has a bachelor pass rate of about 22%. And then kids who are in wealthier areas going to Fishhook High School, which has a bachelor pass of about 75%. I'm just like pulling out of my head for that. I think it's about 75. So you can see from this, this is a little picture of expectations of young people for tertiary. And the big fat white part of each area is how many kids are expecting to go to Technikon or university. So the expectations of young people in South Africa for tertiary are quite high. You can see that coloured families have less expectation of tertiary, and in fact in the past their tertiary participation rate was less than other racial groups, but it's now about equal to being Black African. So these expectations of participation in tertiary persist. So there was another graph they did after this. They went back, this is a study that was done over a number of years, so they went back and asked the same people again, you know, had they participated in tertiary, what were their expectations? And even though so few young people actually get to access tertiary, they still fully expected 3 or 4 or 5 years later that they were still going to go to tertiary. And when they started to interview the young people about how they'd stuck to that expectation over so many years of actually not accessing tertiary, the participants started to cry, and it was so painful they actually had to stop the interviewing. So this dream thing that kids stick to, by which I mean young people stick to, it's persistent even in the face of actual failure. Okay, this is in my study. I had 813 grade 11s and in 6 different high schools, and I asked them the same question: what do you expect to do when you finish high school? And you can see in my study that around about 80% of them expect to go to some sort of tertiary, mostly to university. I can use my little pointy thing here. There we go. That's the university sector. And then this is University of Technology, and this is college. And all these sections are kind of so small that I didn't stick a percentage on them, but yeah. So most kids are expecting to go on. But the reality is that more than 50% of post-school age youth are not in education or employment. So even though they have these really high expectations of going on and dreams about being in UCT and what that will be like for me, the reality is that they actually don't access that, and in fact don't even access jobs, half of them. Okay. I've got a few of these slides in that are just pictures, and when we get to these, I'm going to stop and actually give you a chance just to chat with each other about what you've heard so far and what's impacting you, because I kind of get bored when I'm listening to other people, so I'm assuming that other people get bored listening to me. So this is a moment to pause and for you to kind of integrate your information. So just like if you're sitting far away and isolated, just huddle into little groups of 4 and just spend a couple of minutes saying, okay, well, this is what I've noticed about this problem in South Africa that we're discussing now. Don't be scared of each other. Okay, let's come back. I can see all your creative juices are flowing now. Okay, this is a picture of school performance in the Western Cape, high school bachelor passes in 2013. Down the bottom here is the cost of the school from 0 to 70,000 Rand. And along the side here is the bachelor pass rate going up to 100%. So a bachelor pass, for those of you who don't know, most school students don't know, so I'm assuming probably most of you don't know, because our pass rate is so terrible, we have grades of passes, like from a terrible pass to a not quite so terrible pass to a slightly reasonable pass, which is called the bachelor pass. So the bachelor pass means that out of your 6 subjects, you passed 4 of them at 50%. And your other 2 subjects you passed at 30%, but you must pass your home language at least 40%. So if your home language isn't one of the 50s, it also can't be a 30, if that makes sense. So bachelor pass technically gives you access to apply for tertiary. If you don't have a bachelor pass, you can't apply. Well, you can apply for tertiary, but you can't apply for university. University or University of Technology require you to have a bachelor pass. So what you can see here is there's kind of a curve, right, going like this, of performance, that as you pay more fees, generally you're buying yourself a better chance of a bachelor pass up to a certain point, probably about here, at which point you pay more fees and you don't actually get anything else in terms of bachelor performance. You might get a nicer uniform or fancier school, but you're not getting academic performance there. Down here, in this chunky spunk down the bottom, is all the free schools who have, as you can see, like a range of performance between almost 0 and just under 60, except for Mondale's actually here. This is COSAT, which is a free school, but like technically not free because they raise funds from donors, so that kind of manages to pretend to be there, but it really should be over here somewhere. So what you can see is basically if you've got no money and you're going to a free school, your chance of getting good education is fairly, slim compared to if you can buy yourself for 20, 25,000 Rand, you can buy yourself Well, this was in 2013. Westerford no longer cost 25,000 Rand, but then it did. And so that's probably about the best value for money on this graphic here. So basically, as a summary, that graphic had 390 schools from the Western Cape, 46,000 matrics, of whom we got about 18,500 bachelor passes. That means 40% got bachelor passes and can apply for university or University of Technology. Of which, from those, 108 were free schools. That was the chunk down there, that big fat lump down there are the free schools. They had 14,500 matrics. They got 3,000 bachelor passes. That's 21%. So if you take that like 21% and that group away from the other group, it means the other kids who went to fee-paying schools got 49% of the bachelor passes. So no fees, 21%, some fees, which means some meaning anything from 100 Rand up to 50,000 Rand. Those kids got 49% of the bachelor passes. So the more you pay in fees, obviously also the more bachelor passes you get. In comparison to other South African countries, South Africa is regarded as one of the wealthier, with reasonable spending on schooling and good enrolment rates. However, Spall and Taylor note that South Africa is ranked lowest of all African countries on various international assessments. Spall and Taylor write about the two school systems operating in South Africa. One is terribly underperforming and is generally free or low fee, and the other has reasonable performance but at a price. Whilst both systems are presenting the same school syllabus, the outcomes are profoundly different, with access to good education only going to those who can afford it. Okay, here we have a little story from Nalizwa. She's in grade 11 at a city high school in Cape Town. It's a school that draws kids from outside the area, so none of the kids at the school actually live in Cape Town City. They come into Cape Town to go to school there. She currently lives with her gran and her 7-year-old brother in Khayelitsha. Both her parents have died. She would like to study hospitality and tourism at Stellenbosch University. You can't study hospitality and tourism at Stellenbosch University, by the way. She remembered her grade 11 term 2 marks to be on average 43%, and she expects this to increase to an average of 66% for matric. I asked her, why are you coming so far for school? She said, most kids here are from Gugulethu or Khayelitsha. They think a school in Cape Town will be a more proper education, but I don't think it's true. There are schools in the townships that provide just as good as Model C. My cousin is at Fizeka and she says people are passing physics with 50%, but my school is failing this subject. Last year, someone got 90% in physics. I think she means at her cousin's school. I think it's the English problem in township schools. They're not so advanced. I would say something and she'd say she doesn't understand, and they haven't learned it or the teacher is absent. Some township schools are still hitting kids. Even at home you don't get beaten, so why should you get it at school? It's disruptive. It makes you not listen to the teacher. In terms of future education and employment in South Africa, the very worst thing that can happen to a young person is that they don't get a bachelor pass. Well, they don't finish school, first of all, and secondly, that they don't get a bachelor pass. The risk is greatest for kids who are in families that don't have financial resources to kind of save them or rescue them from their terrible performance. This is kind of what it looks like. For every 10 young people in the Western Cape, 4 do not complete school. 4 do not get a bachelor pass. 2 do get a bachelor pass. Those 2 are most likely to be kids who are going to fee-paying schools, who have financial resources to buy their education. This graphic makes me so depressed. Okay, turn around and talk to your friends about it. So I heard some conversation around why do kids drop out of school, and I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but one thing I do want to mention to you is, because I started to look into this a little bit recently, we found a study in KZN around pregnancy, teenage pregnancy and school dropout. And our expectation, I think, and also the researchers in this study, the expectation was that girls would get pregnant and then marks would decline and they would drop out of school, that would be the sequence of events. But they tracked with thousands of teenage pregnancies in KZN, and they found that it was actually the other way around. Their marks dropped first, and then they got pregnant, and then they dropped out of school. And so it started to, like, in my mind, started to kind of develop an idea around identity and being a teenager. And you have I'm kind of polarizing it here, but like, I'm a good kid, I get good marks, I come to class, I don't backchat my mum, I don't sleep around, I do my homework, I hand it in, and I get good marks. And on the other side is, I'm not a good kid, I do backchat the teachers, I not drop out, but I try not to come to school as often as possible and hang out with my friends, and I come home late at night, and I do sleep around, and my marks are terrible. And so there's like kind of, that's polarizing. But if you're in this group, this trying to be good group, and your marks drop, what are you going to do in terms of your identity? If you're belonging to this package means I need to have good marks and your marks aren't good, then your choices are kind of like to either pretend that your marks are good somehow to, maintain that identity, or you got to change groups because you need to belong when you're a teenager. It's important. So I can't prove any of this. It's just like I just started thinking about it, thinking it through for me. But there's also a narrative I hear often in our communities. In fact, I heard it twice last month at two big social development presentations from the Minister of Social Development. You can be anything. Don't let anyone hold you back. Dream big dreams. The world is open to you. So here we are, trying to be good, get good marks, fit the package, live the dreams, but our marks are not great. But people are saying you can be anything. Like, what do you do with that as a young person? How do you reconcile that in your sense of identity and belonging? I almost wanted to write to him and say, can you please stop saying this in public? So my research, I had 6 Cape Town high schools with average bachelor pass performance. So that means between 35 and 50% of the learners historically at the school get bachelor passes. 813 grade 11s completed a survey with me at the start of term 3 last year. And obviously I've also interviewed some of them because you're hearing their stories. Most of the learners were able to coherently lay out some or all parts of a tertiary study plan, including where they wanted to study, what course they want to study, how long that course would take, and the career it would lead to. So they're not missing information about how this thing works in terms of the career that they want to get to. They have specific knowledge of their aspiration pathway, although possibly not specific knowledge of the actual career, like what would it be like to work a day there, and possibly not of the application process, because I didn't ask them questions about those two things. And this is what we saw. This is like the kids got rated for their plan. So these kids here had a great plan. Basically, they had all parts of it in place. They could tell me all those things, where they were going to go, how long it was going to take. They chose an institute that actually offered their course, and it led to the career they wanted. These guys had like one piece of information missing. These guys had 2 pieces of information missing. And this little chunky here had no knowledge of their plan at all. So basically everything was wrong in their plan. And these guys are not planning to go to tertiary in my study. So you can see most of my participants said they were going to go to tertiary in my sample. So it's not a lack of knowledge about their specific plan that is the problem. This is Nelizwa. She says, I asked her, is there anything else you've been thinking about whilst we've been talking that you'd like to say? She said, with my marks, what are the chances of getting into university? And I explained about entry marks at various institutes. Oh, I left her name in. Sorry. She told me she wants to go to UCT or UWC. UCT and UWC are good universities that I want to go to. These are my first options. Where do other kids from your school go? Fashion designer school. Some don't want to study. Some want to go to Cape College. They don't have ambition. It's only a few. Are you one of those with ambition? Yes. I know what I want. I know where I came from, where I want to be. I have some pictures of where I want to be, even though it might not be realistic. What is not realistic? Like, I want to go to university, and then I look at the fees and I think, yo, how are you going to go there? I'm just striving for the bursary. None of the kids said I couldn't use their names, by the way. I just changed them I felt like I wanted to. So she won't mind her name's there. Bongile, do you think you have high expectations? Yes. I expect these marks because I need them. I really want to get into UCT. It is my dream. So your goal of going to UCT causes you to expect you will get these marks. Yes, because those are the marks I need. So if you didn't know what you wanted to do, would that cause you to not aim for high marks? Yes. Do you think there will be any girls who don't pass matric? Yes, there will be some. What do you think about those girls? They don't set goals for themselves. They didn't work hard towards those goals. They didn't work as hard. Well, we can't all go to tertiary. We don't have the same capabilities. We don't have the same goals. Okay. Where did the kids want to go? What did they want to study? This is what it looked like. These are just the most popular careers. So there were other careers that did come out, but these were what we mostly wanted. Here you can see business and management is a big, fat, chunky 67%. So a BCom at UWC, you need an average of about 60%. A BCom at UCT, you need an average of 80%. Engineering at UCT, you need, again, probably about high 70s to get into, including high 70s for maths and physics. Law at UWC, 60% to get in. UCT, 80%. Finance, by which they meant they wanted to be a chartered accountant. At least 80% UCT. So the average mark of the learners who did my survey was about 48%. So you can see like how big the gap is between even getting into the easiest university, which is UWC, is easier to get into, and where they actually are. There was a big, big gap. And when I was speaking to one of the girls whose comment, the one whose name I left in by accident, Nilizwa, she started to realize that that gap existed for her. So, and then she was like asking me, well, like, what do I realistically need to get into this thing? So just because you provide realistic information to kids doesn't also mean that they can, they're going to moderate their expectations. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but I'm going to pause and give you a couple of minutes just to digest that. Do you have a question? Yeah. Luke.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going. My question is that number of people who responded? So like 67 people?
Yeah.
Or is that a percentage?
No, that's numbers of kids. And it's only the top. So there were other careers that like 2 or 3 or 4 people wanted, but I didn't put them into the graphic. That was number. Okay. Yeah.
I'm kind of confused. I'd like to know something. Those statistics that you're giving us, let me first say that in every culture, there's always going to be a higher level, higher class, middle class, and lower class in every culture.
Yeah.
So now, I don't know whether we're talking about our black ethnic group, our white ethnic group, or is it a combination of them all?
Oh, the race of the kids.
Yeah,
so in my
of,
study,
yeah.
They were black, African, and coloured, about half-half.
Okay. Because the reason
and very few other Africans.
Because the reason why I'm saying this, I'm going to go back a little bit to what you showed us from the statistics. You showed us statistically that there are going to be 4 who are not going to get out of high school.
Okay, so that's a whole population statistic.
It's the whole.
Yeah, agreed. Background does have a factor, and money is a huge factor. And I think that is why this one is illustrating money is a huge factor. If you can buy access to a good school, your chance of passing is much higher than if you can't buy access to that good school. It doesn't mean that no kids down here get into tertiary. Some of them do. It also doesn't mean that none of these wealthy family, mostly white kids don't get bachelor passes. Some of them don't. I have a kid in matric who I don't think is going to get a bachelor pass this year. So it does happen. Okay? Happens to everybody. There's range within. Agreed? Yeah. Okay, take a few minutes, talk that through. We'll have time for more questions at the end. We're kind of more than halfway through, so there will definitely be question time at the end. All right. Okay, let's hear from Tembisile. I'm expecting an average of 75% when I write matric. I said, when you did the survey, you said you were expecting 85%. He says, I'm just being realistic now. I realise that standard is too high. What happened to make you more realistic? I don't know. I lack an interest in some of my subjects now. I'm just doing it now to finish. It's something bad. I have to change my attitude. Where does your work ethic come from? My situation, born of a single parent, I feel lazy, but I have to make my mum proud. I have to put food on the table. I think about my mum working hard all those years to clothe and feed me and pay for my schooling. Does she say that to you, that you have to work hard because of the hard work she's done to care for you? I say it to her. She says she doesn't want my money, just for me to be successful and humble and not forget where I came from. What does she mean about not forgetting where you come from? Some people, when they get successful, they forget where they come from, like the Eastern Cape, and they don't go and visit. Also certain values, family, hard work, education, and not doing wrong. Okay, where do Cape Town learners in my study, where did they want to go and study? You can see University of Cape Town, really popular. TVET College, not very popular. So when you look at my sample that I took, the reality is that most of the kids in my study are not going to get into UCT. In fact, the reality is most kids don't get into UCT. Most of the kids in my study, if they applied to TVET College, would get in. But they're not going to. So that's like, it's less than a quarter who are considering, no, not a quarter, less than an eighth that are considering applying for TVET.
What is TVET?
A college, like False Bay College, Cape College. Yeah. What impact does this terrible underperformance of the poorest of South African schools have on learner access to tertiary? Most obviously, if you don't have the marks, you can't get access. Less obviously, learners who don't have the marks believe that they do have the marks. Learners with the worst marks have the highest expectations of their marks improving by the time they write matric. And devastatingly, previous research into similar problems shows that the worst performing, most unrealistic learners are also resistant to information that could better calibrate their aspirations to reality. Calibrate means bring it in line. So that was like where I said sometimes even when you give them information, like I gave Nelizwe information about the universities and she listened to me, that doesn't mean that she will change her aspiration. So in my study, 66% of the learners don't have the marks that they need to get into the course that they say they want to do in the middle of grade 11. I went to 2 additional high schools and I took a sample of their few years ago grade 11 and then what the marks were at matric to see what happens between the middle of grade 11 and matric, what is realistic. And what I found was on average marks went up by 4% only. And the range was -3, some kids lost, up to +20. 2 kids got +20. They were both boys who were lazy, and the principal said this was a lazy boy who didn't work till they got to matric. So the kids who are really, really working hard already in the middle of grade 11, they can expect their marks to go up by, on average, 4% only. So I rated my study, I rated my kids' expectations of mark increase as either realistic, possible, unlikely, or not at all likely, which means it was over 22% because nobody in the other schools had over 22%. The learners I was most concerned about were those who didn't have the marks they needed and had a very unlikely expectation of a mark increase. And this is what it looked like. So this is the chance of them improving their marks by how much they think they're going to improve. So these guys, 208, which is like a quarter of my sample, do not have the marks they need, and their expected mark increase is not at all likely, which means it's over 22% from the middle of grade 11 to matric. And a further kind of quarter of the sample, or even, further quarter of the sample have unlikely. So some people did get it in my sample, but not really very likely. And you can see these are the guys that are possible and realistic. Just a really small, chunky there. So that's roughly a quarter of my sample that had no chance of reaching their tertiary goal based on their current performance, and a further who are unlikely. Whilst there are high-risk learners at all the schools in my sample, the free school in my sample had a largest chunk of high-risk learners. So the risk was less as kids paid more fees for the schools in my sample. Okay, this is a slightly complicated little picture of, along here is real marks that the kids actually got. And these are how much they inflated their marks in their memory. So if their mark was really 20% and they thought it was 35, then that's a plus 15. And what you can see here is that the kids with the lowest marks, these are their real marks, had the biggest inflations of where they thought their marks were. So this is what I'm showing before. The worse the marks are, the more in your memory you inflate your memory of marks. So if I'm really like only a 20 or a 30 percenter, I remember that I'm a 50 percenter. And as the marks improve, so the learners become more realistic. So these learners they're calibrated. You know, their memory of their mark and their actual mark, their ability to reflect on their performance and set goals probably related to that, is all kind of lining up. These guys won't know if they've improved because they thought they were getting 35% when really they were only getting 21%. You see? This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I didn't discover it, Dunning and Kruger discovered it back in 1998, I think, and they've kept writing about it ever since. And they've found it in lots of situations, but nobody's ever looked at it in terms of school performance before. So Dunning-Kruger said, in essence, we propose that when it comes to judgments of performance based on knowledge, poor performers face a double burden. First, deficits in their expertise will lead them to make many mistakes. For example, in terms of schooling, these are our academically weak learners. They make mistakes in their schoolwork. Secondly, these same deficits lead them to be unaware that they're making the mistakes. They believe they're doing well at school. They remember good results that they actually do not have. And in fact, they also are the ones who imagine that they're going to get the best matric results. So the worse the performance is, the better you remember it to be and your higher expectations of matric. It's so frustrating. Yes. Yeah, your question.
Is this a South Africanism? Has it been compared to other countries?
So this is my study that I've done here in Cape Town, this one. Dunning-Kruger are in the United States, but they've also, there's been a study at WITS looking at unemployment, and at Fort Hare looking at success in first-year university, also with the same kind of theoretical basis.
So it's not just us?
No. No, it's not just South Africa. No, it's an international phenomenon.
And the surname Kruger doesn't mean anything?
No, they're two different people. One guy's called Dunning, the other guy's called Kruger, and no, doesn't mean anything. It does sound like it, doesn't it? Okay. The annual mismatch between aspiration and enrolment at tertiary. is bound to foster cumulative descent as the ambitions of successive cohorts of young people are thwarted, a social phenomenon with potentially far-reaching consequence. This is basically just saying, what is this going to do to our society that every year we have kids, so many kids, thousands and thousands of kids who believe they're going to get into tertiary, but they don't get in? What's that going to do to us? And what can we do about it? This is my last slide. I think we need to wrap up. We were going to finish at past and it's now 22. And I know some of the Cornerstone staff need to get back to lectures. So, but there's still networking time. That was brilliant. And I forgot to mention, but all our partners were